Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Week in Gaming. Next week is October week 3, and as usual we'll be bringing you reviews, interviews, early access releases, deals and bundles and all that kind of stuff. So first up we have a bundle, and this is the humble Capcom Bundle. Capcom, one of those publishers that no one really thinks about in terms of anything other than Resident Evil or maybe Street Fighter, games like that, but they do actually do quite a lot of other reasonably good titles, and some of them feature in this bundle. So the first tier features one of my all-time favourite side-scrollers, which is Strider. This is a remake of a much older game. I think it was on quite an old retro console back in the day, but it's been remade for PC. It's great, and he still does that crazy spiral backflip when you jump normally, which is pretty good. Also, Lost Planet 3 and Resident Evil Revelations is on the first tier. On the second tier, we have DMC Devil May Cry, and also another Resident Evil Revelations game. I think it's the second one. They have quite long titles. It's hard to remember what all of their titles are. There's so many Resident Evil games, and it's hard to keep track of which order they're in. And the third and final tier includes a Resident Evil 5 DLC bundle, and also the Street Fighter 4, which is a pretty good deal. In my opinion, this entire bundle is worth it just for Strider, because I was a big fan of that game. And of course, the whole bundle comes with a 50% coupon for another Resident Evil game of your whatever it is. Oh, and included in the tier 1, which not a lot of people may remember, is a game called Bionic Commando, which is quite old, probably hasn't aged so well, but it's a really good game, and I strongly recommend some of you take a look at that one. Releasing on Tuesday the 20th of October is a game by Kai Games, and it's being published by Paradox, and this is Knights of Pen and Paper 2. Now, the original game was reasonably okay. It arrived to a bit of a lukewarm reception, to be honest. I think people were expecting something a little bit more deep, I guess, than the game that they got, but it is still a reasonably entertaining title. And of course, we now have a successor to that with Knights and Pen and Paper 2. This game is very much similar in terms of gameplay style. You can have 4 players at once, and of course this game is now being called the New Rules Edition. I don't know whether this is a bit of a jib against D&D for their copious amounts of different rules that they add to all their new titles, or whether it is generally following some extra rules. But this one's going to be following the old JRPG style storyline gameplay elements, and of course for some reason it has a crafting system, because hey, what games don't have crafting systems these days? So it's generally much of the same stuff, but it seems like they're trying to improve on a lot of the parts that the previous title didn't do so well. I'll probably pick it up just because I quite like casual games like that, and it looks relatively interesting, and it's that 8-bit art style. It's pretty good. If you have one of those friends, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, one of those friends that likes those kinds of games, and it's well worth picking up just to play it with them for a little bit of entertainment. Another game coming out on Tuesday the 20th of October by Double Damage Games, and this is a game I've really been looking forward to releasing, is Rebel Galaxy. This is a title which I have already got a review key for, but because of the way schedules lied, it's not going to be reviewed for 2 weeks, I think. And it's kind of like a swashbuckling pirate game, similar-ish to Freelancer, except it's a little bit more automated. Instead of you pew-pewing enemies with your crazy guns and stuff like that, it's quite a lot of it is target fired instead. But you will of course be able to upgrade your ships. You'll be captaining a Star Destroyer, not the triangular ones from Star Wars, unfortunately, but you'll be able to upgrade that as well as your weapons, and you'll meet various denizens of the galaxy and either kill them, be diplomatic with them, and just generally complete missions. So I'm expecting this game to be relatively open. It's all about exploration, and of course it's going to have a storyline for you to follow as well. So overall, I'm very excited to play this game. The graphics look pretty great, and the gameplay trailers also look pretty good. But of course, if you are a little bit unsure, you can wait for our review in a few weeks' time. Again, releasing on Tuesday the 20th of October is another game by developers you wouldn't expect to see developing this kind of game. Codemasters, the guys who make all the F1 games and racing games in general, bizarrely were the people that bought the Overlord IP. And so now they're bringing out a new Overlord game, except it's not what you would expect. This is basically going to be the week of the 4-player co-op games. We've got Knights of Pen and Paper. The next release that I'll be mentioning is a 4-player co-op, and of course this one is a 4-player co-op too, and it's turned into a bit of an isometric hack and slash RPG style game. It's a 4-player online co-op game. You will obviously be able to have AI take their places as well. And it's kind of merging in the area of Diablo. Obviously, you'll be able to summon various goblins and minions. There'll be tons of different types, as usual in the previous game. And obviously, you'll be encouraged to be an asshole throughout the whole game and destroy everything that is good and pure. So I don't know how I should think about this one. It's surprisingly cheap. It's like £11.99 Great British pounds at the moment. It's 4-player co-op, and it's not quite the Overlord game you would expect, which I think is interesting. It's a good way to go because a lot of the Overlord games were sort of very much the same thing over and over again, and I think that its popularity was sort of limiting it at some stage. So I guess this is a risk, and who knows, it might actually pay off for Codemasters, and they might breach the racing genre and come into hack and slash. And releasing on Friday the 23rd of October is another 4-player online co-op game. This one's by Fat Shark, and it is Warhammer End Times Vermin. Lots of colons and apostrophes in that title. It gets a little bit irritating to write down. But this is another game I've been looking forward to. Unfortunately, didn't get a review key for this one, but the schedule's so busy that I'm kind of glad that I didn't have to try and ham-fist it somewhere in there. But this is... I'm really looking forward to this. This is a first-person, swordy, old-school Victorian type game where you'll be fighting rat men. There are 5 different hero classes for you to choose from, as well as tons of different weapons for each of those individual hero classes. And you'll be following like a story along 13 separate levels. It's going to be a drop-in, drop-out system, very similar to Left 4 Dead. Obviously, the spawns are going to be similar in the fact that they're dynamically created, so you won't just sit in one place and wait for an enemy to spawn over and over and over again. It looks relatively interesting. You've got varied hero characters and their abilities and stuff, loads of different weapons, and overall it just looks quite good. I'm not sure. It's one of those games that's currently sitting on the fence. It's either going to be really great or it's going to topple over the other side and just smash to pieces and not do very well. But it's grimdark all over. It's Warhammer. It's going to be added onto that stack of Warhammer games that are currently growing extremely quickly these days. So yeah, I'm probably not going to get a chance to play it, so I'd appreciate if one of you guys could let us know in the comment section below if you do get it, how good it is. And finally, on to our review for next week, which is going to be on Thursday the 22nd of October. This is being published by Digital Extremes, the Warframe guys, so they're not developing it, but Endspace is. And this is Sword Coast Legends. Now, this game is most similar to Neverwinter Nights in the way that it's going to be formulated, but it's got one key difference. I jumped in the game a couple of days ago just to start it off and get everything set up. And what happens is you jump into the main menu and you'll create your first character, and then that will be you. And then when you join a campaign, you'll use that character, you'll progress, you'll level up, and you'll gain gold and get weapons and stuff like that. And obviously you can play the campaign in multiplayer or single player. And then when you go on online, you can also use that character, and you can download, play and rate other players' maps, campaigns, quests, all that stuff. And then your character will progress persistently online as well. And you'll be able to gain experience and gold and level up like that. It's obviously got the deep level up systems that you would expect in a typical RPG. Graphically wise, it's pretty good in comparison to a lot of old school RPGs like Pillars of Eternity. It's quite newish. It's most similar to, I'd say, Neverwinter Nights 2, maybe a little bit better on the poly count. Overall, it's quite an interesting concept, and I have to say I haven't seen this sort of thing done before. It will be interesting to review, no less, and of course check it out next week on Thursday, and you can see what we think. That's it from us at NextPowerUp. Join us next week on Thursday for our regular weekly review of Sword Coast Legends. And of course, join us next week on Saturday for our next Week in Gaming episode. As usual, leave your comments in the section below for what you guys have been playing. I recently just gave up on League of Legends. I couldn't deal with the players anymore. And so I bought the Ultimate God Pack for Smite and decided to start playing that. And actually did surprisingly well. It's different, I have to admit. It's quite strange. But yeah, thanks for watching and join us next week.